All right, so welcome back, everybody. This is going to be part two of the external and internal validation episode. So if you have not watched part one, be sure to watch that because we basically break down all the components of this topic. So the first part was all about external validation and the importance of external validation, but also the importance of having balance between internal and external. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is how we can, if we are somebody that is over reliant on external validation, how we can start to heal that and restore the parts that need to be in balance for us to be able to have, internal and external validation. They're both beautiful when they're being used with, the right intention. So yes, let's dive right in. We won't waste any time. So we'll start with Reno this time.
Okay.
What gets in the way of you feeling internally validated?
So literally as I'm sitting here, it's so funny because I had this inspiration to just like reach and grab this like mirror and see shit is just like dusty. This as kind of like a metaphor. There's like all these like smudge marks and things in the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's like I would say like that is sort of like a metaphor for, let's say, the thoughts or like the shame or like the trauma that I've experienced in the past, the conditioning that I've experienced in the past that is sort of in the way of me, um you know feeling like my best self and radiating that, I'm going to say, innate beauty, brilliance, light, glory, whatever you want to call it, that I believe is in every single person. Like every single person has this capacity, is made up of this stuff, you know. And so, yeah, it's like, my the bully. Well, I won't say his last name, but like, I'm thinking of Devin in like grade school, and the ways in which he was mean to me, or the kids on the playground or out in my community who said unkind things to me, whether it was like you're like a girl, or don't wear that, or don't why are you talking that way, or why are you moving that way, or why are you dressing that way, or why are you being that way. I'm thinking of the moments when I was reprimanded while moving in an authentic way, reprimanded by, say, a parental figure, an authority figure, or even someone who, like, I was close to and was kind of surprised that they would, maybe say something like that to me when I felt like I was in my sort of glory or authenticity. And recognizing that, like, that may have been coming from a place of their own insecurity, you know. Um, Also, I would say, um, there, I think external, let's say, rhetoric or influence, like the media, um, there's sort of there's a subliminal messaging that happens when, say, you're constantly seeing people who look a certain way, or behave a certain way, or dress a certain way, or talk a certain way, or live in a certain way, or have certain things, or um, you know, um, spend time in particular groups. Right? We talked about a lot of this in the previous episode. It's like those things can subliminally impact, um, whether or not I'm internally validated. And then I would say, connected to all of that would be things like social media and social groups and social pressure, all of that. Those things become distractive. They pull me away from, sometimes, depending, they're, it's nuanced, but they pull me away from, um, having an internally validated, relationship with myself, an internally sourced, and ideally internally thriving relationship with myself, and I'm sure the list goes on. I've certainly missed some, I imagine, but that's what I've got. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Reno.
Mm.
What about you, Mr. Michael?
Yeah, I think everything Reno said for sure. I call that forgetting who I am. Everything that you kind of said when you kind of forget that lose that
That's so
connection.
good.
Yeah, I just kind of forget who I am sometimes. And for me, that's a very spiritual thing. The way you described it, was great. Like I definitely understood all of that. Another way you can say it is I kind of forget the way I like to think about it is like seeing myself through the eyes of the universe or God or source,
Mm.
whatever word you want to use there, right? Like the universe isn't sitting up, down, wherever they're judging you, like, oh, you really should have done better on that one, Michael. Like that's not how that works. At least not in my belief system. That's not how that works. Okay. So I think when I forget who I am, that really takes me out of it. So losing connection to that really deep sense of self that I am perfectly imperfect, right? It's not about being perfect. It's about being imperfect. And that is just exactly the way I'm supposed to be. With all the flaws and all of the mistakes and all of the times I fuck up and disappoint people. Not to say that I'm condoning that behavior, but it happens. I'm human, right? And so to that, I guess the way I would put that into practice is when I fall off my habits that keep me to that connected self. So when it comes to my rituals, what that means is the little things I do day to day, such as going for walks outside, getting into nature, just having that alone time, that solo time for me to go inward and just check in with myself and connect with myself. Those little things each day, those little habits just kind of keep me in that sense of that space of inner validation. The opposite of that is kind of like what Reno touched upon with social media. What keeps me out of it, or what gets in the way of feeling internally validated, is when I'm over focused on the external, when I get out of my lane.
Yeah.
When I focused on my lane, I'm pretty good. When I start looking at other people's lanes, what they're doing, what's going on over here, what he's doing, what he posted, what they look like, all that stuff, then it throws me right off. So I would say that comparison, the compare and despair factor, definitely takes me out of the internal validation. What I like to do, of course, comparing is again part of our social being, right? We can have this conversation as well. It's just what we do. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's a way to do it. I think that is beneficial to me. Like if something is inspiring, and I'm like, oh wow, if they can do it, then I can do that too. Or that's a great idea. That's going to inspire me to do this thing over here. And that way it's beneficial, or just simply admiring it, like, oh wow, good for them, good job, way to go. And it means nothing about me at all versus when I use the comparison as a weapon against myself, like, oh, they did it, I suck. That's where it kind of throws me off. So, when I'm in those other people's lanes, that's usually when I swerve right off into the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a
Yeah,
hyper focus on the external and not focusing enough on my lane. I guess if we're going to use analogies, that's it. When I'm get too much out of my own lane.
yeah. I want to add a couple of things that I thought about when you're speaking. And Michael, I mean, I could say this about both of you, but you have such a way with words. Like I love the simplicity in like how you described all of that, and I just really felt it. Like, yeah, thank you. That was beautiful. I find when I'm on these, like when I'm in these conversations, I'm like learning stuff and realizing stuff as we're all speaking. So it's really cool.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, there were two things, and one was this recognition as you were speaking, Michael, of the like importance of that balance. Like, I think sometimes if we become too internalized, then we sort of our relationship to the external diminishes. If we become too externalized, our relationship to the internal diminishes. So what I saw was kind of that dance between the two and honoring both of them, the internal and the external. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is like, so much of what's happening when we're sort of discussing validation, internal or external, has to do with thought, like it's sort of interesting to just step back and really, really observe the fact that like what is happening here is thought, is ideas. Like someone is having a thought or an experience, and then they're sharing that with you. you're having a thought or an experience, and then that's like, you know, you're having a thought and then maybe an associated feeling, and that's creating an experience in you. And I think there's something to be said about being able to like hold that gently and lightly, you know, rather than sort of gripping it or making it mean so much, you know. And it's okay sometimes to be like, oh, that meant so much to me. And I think also to sort of, yeah, just kind of hold it and be like, you know, when someone says you're, you know, a piece of crap or, you know, critiques you or something like that, to be able to sort of hold that lightly. And when someone says you're the best thing since sliced bread, to be able to hold that lightly too and be like, oh, that's, you know, that's really nice. You know, you suck. Oh, cool. Okay, well, thanks for sharing that with me. You know, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because when we first started the Brotherhood, we've told this story many times, but there was a lot of criticism and being attacked, and a lot of it was directed at me. And because at that time I was being asked to heal this part of me, it was very painful. It was hurtful to go through all this because I was outsourcing. And then that was my people pleaser. So doing a lot of healing around this now, you know, I get criticism and stuff, and it doesn't really have much of an impact on me. And I will say too, like when I do get positive feedback, it still feels good, but it's like when you heal this part of you, you're kind of neutral to it all. You can take it or leave it. You know what I mean? So it's not like I need these people to tell me that I'm worthy to be here and doing this with you guys. Like, you know, and if I get knocked down or people try and knock me down, it doesn't knock me down. So it's just interesting, right? Like it really shows us the work we need to do when we are so fragile and swayed in the direction of the people that are trying to sway us, right? So that's part of it, is like being in my power is being grounded and centered in myself, that the wind can't blow me around, right? Wind being the people around me. But I want to share a bit about kind of what was coming up for me, because what gets in my way of feeling internally validated was a lot of things. I have quite a long laundry list here of things I want to share. The first one was not knowing how. I didn't know how to internally validate. I didn't even know what it was, because I think I grew up in a household where I didn't get encouraged to individuate. I didn't get encouraged to have my own boundaries and be who I was. And I didn't know who I was for a lot of growing up. I had a very open sense of self, and I kind of felt like I was like porous, you know what I mean? So when it comes to me feeling internally validated, like, you know, add on top of that the shame of being gay and struggling with that, for me it told me again that there was something wrong with me being gay, that there's something wrong. And that sense of I'm wrongness told me that my opinion of me, there was something wrong. If there's something wrong with me, my opinion of me must be wrong, right? So I wasn't able to internally validate, I think, for that reason. And then within the shame, you know, umbrella for me, it was a lot of self-limiting beliefs about who I was and my worth. I had a lot of self-doubt. And you know, from that place of self-doubt, it was like I just couldn't. I literally couldn't validate myself because I didn't feel like my opinion of me was valuable, right? It was such a messed up place to be. And I think that's from that place is where I started to learn how to use external validation to get my needs met. And I did that in my family system as well. Like I grew up in quite a codependent household, and had a lot of codependency with my mother. And what codependency taught me was that my sense of self didn't matter. My mother's needs were more important than mine. And that was where I think a lot of my self-worth issues came from, is I didn't actually go through the phase as a young boy of learning how to have a separate sense of self. My sense of self was measured based off of my mother, right? It was such an interesting dynamic. So that's where this, you know, the main point I want to make here is what got in the way of me feeling externally validated was this over reliance on external validation. And but the point you made, and it really stood out to me, Reno, when you shared about the plant and the soil and the sunlight, like it needs these elements in order to thrive. But there's also this process of like, when the plant gets these elements, it then has to do its own internal thing and it has to grow, right? And I think for me that I'm now learning in my life how to allow these things to come in now and start to help me grow, right? Because I do think external validation is, like I wrote down here, over reliance on external validation, but the other side to that could be not letting external validation in, not letting people in to support you and help you develop that part of you that it then therefore feels like you're confident enough to validate yourself. So they go hand in hand, right? Like we really need both of them. We can't have internal validation without external validation being a part of it. So, and this is a very new realization for me. And I went through this point of, like, I called it turning off the taps of external validation. Well, guess what? I had to turn the taps back on. And that was a really confusing, like, I can't even really describe the process. It was just really challenging for me because it really highlighted to me how I need to start letting people in to help me hold up that mirror, because I have blind spots, right? I need the external world to show me my internal world, right? And I didn't like that. I hated that. And I had a lot of ego energy around that. Like, I don't need people, keep people out to protect myself. But now I'm learning how to let people back in. And it's like, I'm learning a lot about myself just through the humility of that process, right? And the mirroring that other people can provide to us. And like, I think you two are good examples, and Callan and all the people in my life that really reflect to me in a very authentic way. Like, it's so important to have this. So yeah.
Oh my God, I had chills when you were speaking. I was like, yes, this is so good. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Reno.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Question 2. How do you practice internal validation?
Pretty bitch.
For those who can't see, that was Rena holding up a mirror.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was in the bathroom the other day. I was taking a shower, and yeah, I forgot it's audio and video. That's so funny. I was in the bathroom the other day, and I was looking at myself in the mirror. I just come out of the shower, and I have my towel on, and I go through this whole like full body lotioning thing I do, moisturizing thing. And I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, pretty bitch. And it felt to myself, you know. And yeah, I think like that's just like one sort of playful example of, you know, internal validation and self-appreciation, you know, in that moment. Like that was, you know, that was coming from me. That was for me, from me. I felt so good in that moment. I was appreciating my body. There was another instance too where, like, again, there's a theme here. Me half naked. I was in my robe and my underwear, and I had just gone pee, and I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, and I just had this moment where I was like, I look really good right now. I ran downstairs and I said to my friend, I said, "Yo, would you do me a favor?" I said, "What's up?" I said, "Can we do a quick photo shoot in the kitchen?" And so I had this, like, I have it here now, but I have this like saucer and this like coffee cup. And I'm in this robe and my underwear, and I kind of sit on the counter. I put my shades on, and I have sunglasses on, and I get her to do this whole like photo shoot. And I'm like fresh out of bed at this point, right? But it was just so fun. And it's like these moments where we're like where I'm feeling myself. I'll ride them sometimes, you know, and just like really enjoy them, because there's also a lot of moments where I'm not feeling myself, you know, where I'm not like into myself. And, you know, in those moments, you know, in speaking to internal validation, those are the moments where like the work happens, you know. It's like those are the moments where I'm invited to go deep, to go inside, like really go inside and hang out with myself and whatever's there, and sit with that and spend a bit of time with it. And I think a big way that I find myself practicing internal validation is to and I know y'all speak about this all the time in this community, is to sit with it and welcome it, you know, to like welcome it all. It's like, oh, in this moment, I'm experiencing this like deep visceral shame or guilt or anger, whatever's coming up, you know, or I'm really not liking myself, or that thing I said earlier, or these things I'm thinking. Oof. And to just kind of sit with all of that and breathe through it and be with it and hold it and make space for it. That's become so powerful. I think another way that I practice internal validation is like what I would call self-permission. Because gosh, Matt, when you were talking about your relationship to your mom and that, I'm like, gosh, we could talk about that for hours. I can relate. I love my mom, right? But also, our relationship made it really difficult for me to I don't know, to have boundaries, to you know, to sort of cultivate what we're talking about here, you know, because there maybe wasn't room for me all the time because I'm carrying this person, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
So, you know, I think there were moments throughout the progression of that healing and that reconciling where I had to go inward and give myself permission. You know, it was like, okay, what I'm feeling is okay. These thoughts are okay. What I'm experiencing is okay. What's happening in this moment is okay. What I look like is okay. You know, like what's here is okay. Um, those are some of the ways I think. And then as I said earlier, going back to um my rituals in the morning. And I'm realizing as I'm saying this, that's a big one. It's like when I choose to get up and exercise and meditate and go for walks, I do these things I call them like God walks. And basically what I do is I'll go for a walk and I'll hit record on my voice memo and I'll go and I'll walk and I'll talk to myself and talk until I'm done. And it's kind of it's like when we take a dog for a walk and it like has its sort of morning poop, but before the poop comes, the dog has to kind of walk around a bit and then the poo finally comes. So I do that. I go for my walk and it's kind of like my morning, you know, emotional, mental, psychological poop, right? And it just comes out. And why I've got my headphones in and my voice memo going isn't because I go back and listen to that shit. I could. It's because I don't look crazy while I'm walking down the street talking to myself. But sometimes I practice moving into that edge and just being like, forget it. I'm just gonna walk and talk to myself and I'm gonna look nutters and that's fine, you know. But these daily practices, like sitting in front of the mirror and lotioning myself and feeling myself and you know and connecting to my body and appreciating, I mean, these are huge. They're paramount, you know, to an internal validation. And then when I go out into the world, it's like someone says, "Oh, you look really good today." That's like icing and cherries on a cake that's already baked for hours before I left the house, you know? So it's like, yeah, thank you. That's great. Like I love to hear that. And I spent a lot of time cultivating that within myself. Bonus, you know, sprinkles. Yeah.
That resonates with me because that is exactly what I do as well. I love the trick of using the recorder. I haven't thought of that one, but I talk to myself constantly, both in my mind and out loud. Usually when I'm at home, I do it out loud. My partner's always like, huh? What? I'm like, no, I'm not talking to you. But I think that's it. For me, that definitely helps. And, you know, the question, how do you practice internal validation? I was like, you just do it. Like you just validate yourself with words. Like we don't have to get too much more in depth. And that's how it works for me. I mean, I'm a simple guy. I like simple solutions, not necessarily easy solutions, but simple ones. And so that really has been the way that I practice it. And that's the most, I guess the easiest. I could do it immediately. I could do it in my mind. And it's sometimes in the mirror. So if I'm having a really tough time, if I'm struggling with something, I will actually go to the mirror and like look at myself and talk to myself. And whether I need a pep talk or whether I need whatever it is I need, that's what I'll do. And that is actually, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it works for me. This kind of leads into the skill of having your own back, which I talk about a lot, which I think is like one of the way I teach is like one of the legs of a table on the table of confidence, self-confidence. One of those legs is having your own back.
Yeah.
And this for me has always been a gap. I can call it a gap in my life. As far as I could remember, like in my friend groups and like school, if people were like saying something bad about me or teasing me, I always wanted so bad this person to just jump in and defend me and have my back and say, no, you don't talk to Michael like that. He's not like that. And that never happened. Never. So most of the time I just sat there and took it or ran away or whatever, just internalized it. But I never had that person to come in and like swoop in and defend me. So something I always wanted. And this followed me through like my work life and such. Until one day I realized, Michael, you are the one to swoop in and defend yourself. You are the one who needs to have your own back, who needs to advocate for yourself, who needs to say, no, you don't get to talk to me like that. You don't get to say that about me. That's wrong. Set those boundaries. And so I didn't learn that until later in my life. And then the next phase of that was when I realized I needed to do that for myself, defending myself against my own self-critic. Because that guy was just as nasty, if not worse. The shame guy, you know, the self-critic within there who wants to cut me down, tells me I'm not good enough. Who am I to la, 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 la. That guy, he's very loud in my mind. I've talked about that here. And so sometimes I have to like have my own back against myself and say, hey, Michael, we're not talking to ourselves like this today. Yeah. This is like old stuff. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to be kinder. We're going to be gentler. We're going to be softer. So giving myself that, what I need, giving myself what I need most, if it's comfort, if it's soothing, if it's, you know, a place to just let things out, whatever that may be. So yeah, I mean, it's the simplest answer, but it's what I got for you guys, is just talking to yourself with kindness. And Reno, I'm going to take your idea. I'm going to pretend I'm talking to someone on the phone. I'm talking to myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And it can be fun too, by the way. I think talking to myself is really fun sometimes, because like I have an argument with myself and like we're just having a good time sometimes. It's not all serious and like dread in there. It's we do have a good time. me and my many personalities.
Yes.
I love that. You guys have such good ideas. Okay, so I want to flip this concept on its head a little bit, because I want to share a bit about my journey. Over-reliance on external validation was my path. And I think for me, it was a play on making my opinion matter to me again, because everybody else's opinion mattered more than my opinion. So there was this reclamation of my opinion. So I think one thing that I'll suggest is to use your opinion more, right? And use it in a positive way. Because when we share our opinion in a negative way, we're more likely to get resistance, and people will want to fight if they don't agree with our opinion, and that can beat us down. How I think it's healthy to use your opinion is by complimenting people, right? And then people will validate you and say, wow, thank you, that felt really good to hear that. And then your opinion just mattered to them, right? And when our opinion matters to someone else, it'll help it matter to us. So I'm kind of like talking to the people who have the same struggle that I had, where over-reliance on external validation is your problem, okay? So once that starts to reclaim itself and you start to make your opinion more valuable, you can then start to transform it, making it valuable to yourself, which is what you guys were sharing, like, you know, like talking to yourself in the mirror, going on walks, like, you know, really just starting to own and step back into your power. And so for me, it was like, it is a mental thing, but I think where it became more, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it actually stuck. My mind is very fluid, and it doesn't grab onto concepts for long periods of time. So worth for me does not exist in my mind. It's the more permanent states of being that I'm looking to achieve are embodied states. So when I feel worthiness in my body is when I feel worthy, not when I think worthy thoughts. Okay, so those are like good for momentary, like if I'm about to get up and do a performance, I can coach my mind into getting into the right place of mind to do it, but it doesn't stick. Right, where it sticks is here. So and I'm holding my hand on my heart for people that are listening. So I think that's an important thing to note here, is that it's like, if we really want to get to the place where we start to feel worthy of validating ourselves, it needs to come from a place of embodiment. And I always say that, right? In almost every episode, I'm always, trying to teach people coming back home to the body. And the last point I'll make here is about worthiness. I've had such a, oh my God, like this has been one of my biggest life lessons, is worthiness is not something that you can pursue. It's not something you can build. It's just something that is in you. It's a well, and it's a never-ending well. And what ends up happening is we sever our connection to that well. That's it. The well is always in you. It's always full. It's ready to nourish you with water of worthiness, but we need to reconnect back into it. So instead of trying to pursue worthiness, it's like more of a remembrance. We need to remember that it's our birthright to feel worthy, and it's our birthright to feel worthy. But a lot of it is the healing work, and the healing work is like undoing the conditioning that we may have learned that our opinion isn't worthy. And whether that came through codependency, enmeshment, shame, inadequacy, wherever this is coming from, that's the part of us that we need to sit with and heal. Then once that happens, we just fall back into worthiness, right? So that's been so helpful for me, because I think for most of my life, I was in a pursuit of worthiness. I was trying to find it. And it's not something that you find, it's something that you remember. And but the beautiful thing about that, and I will say this, is that external validation helped me remember that. The mirror that people hold up, right? When somebody sees my divinity and my beauty, and they reflect that back to me, whether it's through words or just through a look or through an energy that they exude towards me, that's when I can remember my worthiness. So again, this is just as important as internal validation as is letting in people to help you and externally validate you, right? And this is all like really fresh wisdom that's coming through in my life right now, as I'm learning how to like receive and doing that. And I'm still on my own little journey of remembering my worthiness. I've come a long way, but I still have some growth in this area, and I don't know if it'll ever be complete. I think it's kind of like a lifelong thing. Maybe that's one of the meanings of life, is like constantly, we come into this life perfect, whole, and complete. We go through our domestication, we get injuries on that we're not worthy, and then we spend our life healing them. And so, but I want to arrive at a destination one day that I just feel fully worthy, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But I just want to focus on the strides I have made, and the wholeness that I do feel at most times in my life. So
I could listen to the two of you talk for ages. It's just like, I have so many times when you guys are speaking, I just get like chills because it's so good. It's good, yeah.
I feel the same way about you, Reno.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, both of you, obviously. Michael already knows. Michael knows how much I love.
Thanks for the validation, guys.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, question 3. How have you learned to be more balanced when it comes to feeling valuable?
Michael, do you want to go first?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can go first.
Whatever.
I mean, I think that what you just said, Matt, that's it. It's that reminder, which, as much as I know that and teach that and go on and on about that, and on my posts and with my clients and even with myself, it's a forget, like I forget. And I think that's why this conversation about the external and the internal validation is so important, because sometimes when you forget that you have that never-ending well, to use your example, you start looking for it very desperately elsewhere, and you find it, but then it goes away because that well does dry up, right? like I said, if you're expecting it from other people, it's going to come and go as quickly as their moods change. So I think for me, it definitely has a lot to do with reminding myself that in the moments that I am at my worst, I'm just as worthy as the moments that I'm at my best. Doesn't change. There's nothing I can do more. There's nothing I can do less. I'm just as worthy as someone that I might feel very negatively towards. They are just as worthy as I am. So I think that's the reminder, which I love that you kind of reminded us of that again. And then kind of remembering, when you touched your heart, I do that as well. I kind of find that whatever chakra that is my heart chakra right in the middle there. And I kind of remind myself that that's where I am. And even if I don't see it, even if I don't feel it, the analogy I use is the one of the sun. So the sun is always there. We don't need to see it right now. I'm looking at a gray sky, it's raining. But the sun is there. I don't question that. I know it's there somewhere. Even in the darkest time of the night, I know that the sun is shining somewhere else. So that's the way I kind of try to remind myself is it doesn't need to be a bright, sunny day. The analogy here meaning I don't really need to necessarily feel like I'm at my best or at my most worthy. It's still there. And that's okay. I've learned to I don't need to see it. I don't need to feel it. I can feel like shit today. I can feel shame right now. I could feel not good enough in whatever way. So I guess it's I don't know if I'm answering the question, but what you said just really inspired me to kind of talk about how I find that balance within and letting myself feel not enough, letting myself feel insecure, and knowing if I do need that external validation, sometimes I'll just ask for it, right? If it's with someone I trust, I'll say, listen, I've had a shitty day. Can you just remind me? But usually this happens if I've had something happen at work. I'll ask can you just remind me why I do this? Why am I doing this again? And he'll kind of remind me. I'm like, oh yeah, right, thank you. So that's another example of the external validation being good. Yeah, I think another thing, a question that I want to add a sub question here if we can, is who determines value?
Yeah.
In my business, it's very easy. My clients determine my value. I put an offer out there. Here's what coaching is. Here's how it works. Here's the price. Do you find that valuable? Yes or no? Very easy. But like in life, who determines this, right? I have my personal core values: authenticity, empowerment, and exploration. Those are kind of like the things to which I live my life by. So I guess I'm answering my own question. When I'm living in integrity, that's when I have that value. Like, okay, for the most part, I'm doing these things. I'm living a life that I want to live. And if you notice, none of those things have anything to do with money, success, body, relationships, even. It's all very much internal. So yeah, I guess I kind of added a question there, sorry. But I do want to know that as you answer this, I guess, Reno, first tell us who determines value for you, and then you can answer the question.
Yeah. So you said who or what determines value?
What? I guess what? Like what's the measure of value? Right?
Yeah, I mean, me, like I do, I guess.
Right.
I don't, yeah. It's interesting because we're talking about things like value and worthiness, and so this is kind of formulating as we're having this conversation. It literally just came up, but it's like I talked about something some time ago. I had posted something on Instagram where I said worthiness is a thought, it's an idea. And I kind of riffed on this. It's like we're often talking about like value and worthiness, right? And it's like, well, okay, first of all, what do these words mean? What are their origins? What meaning do we personally give them? And ultimately, it's an idea. It's like worthiness is an idea, value is an idea, right? And if you ask different people, they're going to experience that word or that idea in a different way. And so this kind of brings me back to what I said earlier about being able to hold this all lightly. And I think what's coming through and what was coming through as we were discussing this is, well, is this creating the experience that I want to be having? Is this creating for me the experience that I want to be having? If it's not, well, maybe I need to rethink it, you know, and maybe shift in a different direction or look at it differently or hold it differently or what have you. So I don't know, at some point I stopped really kind of spending a lot of time looking at like value and worthiness, and more so kind of coming to a simpler place of, is this creating the experience that I want to be having or isn't it? You know, and then sort of maybe moving away from it and in the direction of what is if it's not. And then I think also, just like if we were to look at some of the things that you know that symbolize value, whether it's like what we're wearing or how we look or, you know, how we speak or education or whatever it is. Again, those are all kind of thoughts and ideas, and, you know, they're made up and they're part of this like social construct. And so let's go with the example of like my body, my hair. Like, yeah, sure, there's a piece where, you know, when it's cut just the right way, it sort of frames everything else and it looks really good and creates an experience for me that is satisfactory, and creates an experience for someone else that maybe turns them on or something when they're looking at me. But it's like this hair, for all intents and purposes, it serves a purpose. Like, scientifically speaking, it just serves a purpose. My nails, like, yeah, they could be like pretty and manicured and whatever, but they're like there so I can like, they're functional. They're there so I can like open stuff, right? It's like my, you know, if I have abs or something, like they're just probably a reflection of how much I'm using this, you know, this body, that area of my body, for functional purposes. So it's just kind of funny when we start to look at all of this stuff through that lens. It's all, and I like this word, like function, you know, it's like functional and it's fun. So for me, I just find holding all of that lightly and viewing it through that, you know, through that lens allows me to maybe not take it all so seriously and to just kind of play with it, you know? Because as RuPaul says, it's like we're born naked and the rest is drag, right? So it's like, yeah, just, you know, like I find holding it all lightly has really served me in that regard. And coming back to what I said originally, I think I've arrived at a place where more or less it ebbs and flows, but like I determine my value and what's valuable. And I recognize that it's made up. You know, made up in a way. Yeah. Yeah.
Well
Thanks,
said.
guys. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
There's a benefit to going last is that I get to get stimulated. And
Yeah.
what was the question though, Michael? Can you repeat it? What?
Yeah, the question was
your sub question.
What for you determines value? Like, how do you determine value?
Oh yeah, okay.
Like, how do you define that word?
So, you know, if you think about like what creates value in our world, it would be like supply and demand, right? If there's low supply and a high demand, something's very valuable, right? So there's this element of like, we need the other and the responsiveness of the system in order to determine what's valuable. And that's like conditioning, in my opinion. Like, we all get programmed to believe that, you know, this certain beauty standard is the one, right? And we put it on the pedestal, and so we associate value to that, and then we measure ourselves up against that, and we say, well, I'm not that, so I must not be valuable, right? That's externally focused value. And there's an important part to that, because we can't change the system. We have to play within it if we want to get our needs met, right? If we all strive towards looking attractive so we can get our needs met. But then we get to a point in life where it's like, fuck that. I don't want to play that game anymore, right? I don't want to put this shit on a pedestal. I'm going to reclaim that. So there's a reclamation, and then the value becomes more motivated based off of what's authentic to you. And so I do think, again, like, I'm going to speak from my very dualistic mind, and I'll say both external and internal create value for me. My journey, though, has been about restoring balance, because I really have given more to the external world on what makes me valuable. And now I'm going through a process of reclaiming that. And I want to share what came alive when you actually asked this question. I felt kind of emotional because I'm going through a period right now where I'm feeling very disoriented and very unstable in my life. Like this singing thing has brought up a lot of stuff. I'm feeling very exposed. I'm feeling very vulnerable. And I'm really being shown right now, like how much I have a fear of failure in front of people. And I'm constantly like contorting my life in a way that I don't have to experience that, right? So being live and singing and performing in front of people, there is so many opportunities to fail publicly, and it's creating so much fear inside of me. And I'm really realizing like how much I need people to like my, you know, like just my family, my friends to like support me through this. But I suck at that. I completely suck at letting people in to help me and support me, because I help people, I support people. I'm not the one that needs that, right? That's a core belief of mine that I'm really unpacking right now. And I'm starting to see like how, like almost it's like how like I'm just yearning to be held. I'm yearning to be held by people right now. And it's like this more tender kind of sensitive part of me that's like really being shown. And I'm tying this back into value in the sense that like when I'm letting myself be held, I feel valuable. Right. And this is an injury that I've struggled to let people hold me, and it's been an impairment of me being able to just feel valuable. Right. So I didn't realize how much this episode was going to really like bring so much stuff home for me. Like, I'm like, holy crap, like, you know, this whole external internal is really playing on a lot of my dynamic in my life right now. And when I do fail publicly, what am I going to need to do? I'm going to need to be with the shame and be with the vulnerability hangover. And then I'm going to need to be held. I'm going to need to be held by somebody, right? And when you were sharing, Michael, about like Star being there for you, and like, it was like, that's what I want. I really want somebody that can be my person, that I can like, you know, feel held by. But I need to do the work on like holding myself, right? And like be there for myself too. So it's, again, it's this whole kind of, this whole dance. I'm tired, yo. I'm so tired. It's like it's an exhausting transformation that I'm going through right now, and I feel like just a lot of heaviness around it. And like yeah, but I do trust that what I'm doing right now is I'm expanding, and it's terrifying, and it's through that expansion that I'm like learning and growing. But I'm like, you know, when you're like, you go through a transformation and like you kind of push your edge out, and it's like scary, you make a choice, but then you have to keep showing up, and it's like the fear can either intensify or decrease. It's never like you just make a decision and then it's done. Like you have to keep showing up, and that's what I'm going through right now, is a lot of like, yeah, it just feels really unstable. It's the best word to describe it. I feel quite unstable right now in my life. Yes.
It's so funny because before you even said held, like being held, there was this moment where you started speaking, and I had this. It was like the like the big black mama in me came through, and I wanted to be like, "Come to mama, come here, come here, I got you." Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
very sweet.
Before you even said it, but yeah, I love that you said that, and also I want to acknowledge you in this moment, and I love the way you share yourself here and your journey and the things that you're going through, and you're very beautiful and very radiant in your like authenticity and your rawness. Yeah, it's cool. And I feel like, you know, I'll speak for myself. See, Michael's doing twinkle fingers. Yeah, there's so, I feel like I get so much, like we gain so much, and in those moments when you're sharing in that way and you're sharing those parts of yourself, and I just feel so connected to you. It's lovely. So it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks, Reno. That means a lot to me. You guys are sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to just share some practical things that I wrote down. So how have I learned to be more balanced when it comes to feeling valuable? So I try to be mindful of the intention behind my seeking of validation outside myself. Again, just reminding myself that like, okay, I'm doing this because I need it for this reason. And again, that's like the transformative part for me is it's, they're both beautiful, but I really want to be mindful of like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I actually trying to get? Because it's like, if I'm like seeking something from my like let's say my vocal coach, and I'm seeking something from her and I don't get it, then it's like it can be an injury for me. But if it's like I tell her, you know what, I'm really needing like to be held right now, and I'm really needing you to tell me like the areas of my voice that sound good, like that's intentional external validation seeking, right? As opposed to it being kind of this like shadowy, like manipulative kind of aspect. It's like, get really clear about the need that you have and then go for it, like ask for it, you know. And I think that for me is more intentional, and it's been helping me. I allow love in by opening my heart. This is the work I'm going through right now, like really, really deeply in my life. And I'm learning how to like open my heart, become more tender, more sensitive, in my external, like, you know, in that part of me. I'm sensitive internally, but I'm not sensitive like in so much in my outside stuff. So I'm learning how to be more, that. And then one thing that I wrote down here is remind myself that validation is not love. These are two very different things. And I think oftentimes people confuse them. Like, okay, I'm going to get validation from the external world and that's going to be love. And I think if we grew up in an environment in our, you know, household or in our family system where we confuse those two things, that can be a reason why we continue to seek it. Right. So it's like seeking out validation from our partners and these sorts of things because we didn't learn how to internally validate. And again, so looking at it like validation is validation, love is love, and they are really different concepts. Right. So that's been helping me. And then a couple practical things is I focus more on what I love about myself than what I don't. And you know, at the end of all my counseling sessions with clients, I do something called strengths and successes. So we focus on like what they're doing well, any progress, and it's always like that. I always leave on a positive note. And it's really interesting what I learned through doing this process. I've been doing it for about a year now with my clients, and people suck at this. People suck at this. They don't like talking about what's good about them and what's going well. Like for some reason, it's like, you know, you ask people about them and they start to talk about the things they don't like about themselves and what they're struggling with. And we get so preoccupied with this. And I think part of finding our value is learning to focus on what we do love about ourselves, what we are doing well. So make time every day to just, you know, jot down a couple things that you're doing well. And sometimes it's the little simple things like, I fucking got out of bed today, you know, and I came onto this podcast recording. Like that's my success for today. Woohoo. Because I wanted to just literally hide under the covers, right? Like that's, so breaking it down to like, what are you doing well? And then Michael, I wrote this down as you were doing your talk, is to give myself space to make mistakes. And that's like really what I'm learning right now is like my value can come out of like giving myself space to just be all the parts of me. And again, my perfectionistic fear of failure energy inside me doesn't like that because I don't want to be seen making mistakes. But again, through this process, I'm like meeting a lot of humility, and humility is the energy inside of us that is like, it's so expansive and it's so forgiving and it's so beautiful, and it just allows us to be as we are. So like the more I like focus on my value from a place of humility and my higher self, the less I'm like playing in this arena of ego energy, which is like very, very fragile and can easily make us think we're not as valuable as we actually are. So it's like, again, I'm moving towards more heart energy, more higher self energy, which is that humility. So it's been a big goal of mine for the last few years, is really, really breaking down my ego, making it more flexible. And I've been meeting more humility, which I think is just such a gift. You know, it restores us back into the sense of like humanity, and that we're all in this ride of life and we're all in this like predicament of the human condition. Right. And when we realize that in ourselves, we realize it in others. And then that's the space that I'm like, okay, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone's afraid of failing. So it's okay for me to get up there and be scared shitless. And right. So this is a big learning of mine right now. So yeah.
And if I may, you said something earlier, and I feel like it you know, piggybacking on what you just said at the end there. You talked about supply and demand, And as you were speaking, I was reflecting, and everything that exists matters, and like, no pun intended in that, scientifically speaking, it's all matter, so like, funny joke, God or universe or whatever, that's very funny, but it all matters, and so, like, we can sort of look at this notion of supply and demand to determine value. And also, I would just say, like, your being here matters simply and solely because you exist. Like, that's it, and aspect of your being and your experience matters. It's like, maybe, let's say, for example, there's like, someone out in the world who is sort of branded and labeled a villain, or someone who I don't really resonate with. They're being and existing in the world in a way that feels unaligned for me. Well, I could say, oh, well, that person doesn't have any value. But the reality is they actually do, because they're informing me of what is out of alignment for me, what
exactly.
with me. So they do serve a purpose. I like to say we exist on a relational plane. Like, I actually think that that's kind of what we're up to here. And if there's another sort of universe, or, somewhere galaxies far away, that maybe there's like another sort of game they're playing there that's different. But like, for all intents and purposes, like, this is a relational plane. Everything about this plane has to do with relationship, And so what that says to me is it's all valuable. It all matters. It's all meaningful, and we get to kind of hold it and observe it and explore it and engage and interact with it in that way, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I missed your meta energy.
Oh yeah, thank you. I know. I think there's a lot of that. And can I just say, what's interesting is there are moments where, like, I'll judge myself, like, I'm critical of myself. I'll notice critical thinking within myself around being so meta, because I think something you two do so beautifully is like bring it into sort of the granular, and the points and stuff, and the specific. Michael, you said simple solutions. I love that for you. You should write that down somewhere. And Matt, like, you really sort of break things down as well. And I go, oh, I should be more like that. Now, it's inspirational to me and it's aspirational to me. I would like to incorporate those qualities into my expression and how I do things. And also, like you just said, thank you for celebrating that I bring the meta.
Totally.
It doesn't have to be a bad thing. I don't have to judge myself. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very welcomed here.
It's complimentary, and that's what I'm saying. It all matters.
Yeah.
It all matters. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Me too.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
We covered a lot today, guys.
Yeah, I'm a little tired.
Yeah, this is good. No, it's been good. I'm happy with this. I guess for the people who are watching on YouTube, I would love to hear from them as well. So like, what are their thoughts on, like, put in the comments the same questions that we asked here.
Yeah,
be curious to know, because like all of these are totally arbitrary, right? Like all of these answers. So I'd love to hear for some other perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. We're here to just stimulate ideas, so feel free to share your ideas in the comments, and come and join us in the Facebook group Gay Men's Brotherhood if you have not already, and then you'll be able to have access to the Zoom hangouts and whatnot. They're also on our website, so if you go onto our website at gaymensbrotherhood.com, you can go to events or community, and you'll see, and you can sign up give us your email, and then we'll email you the Zoom links and everything for the Zoom hangouts. And we love when people come, like our community members come and share their thoughts and stuff. These are probably, I think, for me, one of my most favorite parts about doing this work in the Brotherhood is facilitating these men's groups. So come and join, and
dive in.
We'll be coming back.
Yeah, dive in. Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of I'll reiterate two things. One, like, there's a lot of juicy stuff happening within this community, and I celebrate for that. And I feel like you can hang out in the periphery and you're going to have a peripheral experience, you know, but if
Exactly.
you really want to get into it, like, yeah, dive in, show up to the Zoom hangouts and, you know, join the community, like all of that stuff, get involved, get engaged, because there's a lot here. And being back, I'm so reminded of that. And and I'm so grateful to be here with you all. Like, it feels so good. I'm like, yes, I miss it so good.
Yeah.
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 I
Thank
second
you.
that. It's nice to have you back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ditto. Ditto.
Thank you.
I feel good about this. And
Mhm.
yeah. Next chapter, let's create some good shit and let's bring it into the world and transform lives and minds and hearts. And so, yeah, couldn't think of two better people to do this with. So,
Yes. Thank you.
all right. Well, until next time, y'all, take care.
Bye.